And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Influences and References, the random podcast, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, what do you want to call it, where we talk about, well, in today's email, I called it the dark side of music production.
I know. What was that? Well, that's all right. I liked it. I had the word dark side in it, and I'm a big fan of just anything that's kind of dark. So.
Yeah. Well, I like to talk about, imposter syndrome, anxiety, creativity, and when you're trying to overcome resistance and those sorts of things. And this is our outlet for that. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Charles Eleftherian. Welcome back all the way from Woodstock, New York.
Thank you. I am once again in Woodstock, New York. Last week I was abroad. Well, I was away. I was not abroad, really. Anyway, I'm back home. Thanks for welcoming me again. Glad to be here. And hope we get some. I don't know who's here. I don't have access to that information, folks. Björgvin is the guy behind the curtain, which is fine by me because I just got to show up and just kind of hang out with him, which is great because I don't get to see him very often.
Yeah, I have to do all the work.
He does. He does a lot of heavy lifting, the poor guy, and it's true. It's true. We all do a lot of heavy lifting, but in this particular relationship, you do a lot of the heavy lifting. And I just try to, I don't know, keep up with you or keep spirits up or keep on point or not. I just try to address what's happening.
Well, so we have some viewers here. Please feel free to send us a comment. Leave a comment in the comment section with a question or a remark, or tell us where you're at, where you're from, where you're tuning in from, why you're even here.
That's a good question. Actually, I would love to know why people are here. I know certain people who are here. I know why they're here. And it's almost like they're not obliged. No, because I still love them and I'm going to hang out with them in 5 seconds after this is over. But,
to his wife.
It's like, yeah, I'm talking about my wife. Thank you, Björgvin. But, and she's probably listening, but I don't know. I don't know why she is. Probably just because she's a fan. Hi, sweetie. Love you too.
My mom is not listening, actually.
Oh, I would have loved that. I was getting so excited. Oh, well.
Well, it's fine.
Anyway, if you want to let us know why you're here, that's great. And if not, whatever. Cut some vegetables, get dinner ready, or do whatever you got to do and keep us on the old radio, as that used to be for me, the radio.
Yeah. Well, do leave a comment because it's always more fun when we get to engage with you guys too. If you have a question or you would like us to riff on something, throw us a bone.
Yo from Australia. I got this comment here. Blake. Hi, Blake.
Super interested in imposter syndrome and music mental health. Imposter syndrome never spoken. Okay, it's never spoken about. So
I think that's how we started off our last Friday together, Björgvin.
Yeah. Ed Charles.
Ed Charles, folks. Yeah. All right. If you want to know why it's Ed Charles, because I have a whole other career as a theater director, which is true. So Google Eleftherian and you will see it. But Charles is my middle name. It's easier to type. It's easier to remember. And it just kind of keeps things separated. So go ahead.
Wait, so you use your pseudonym for SEO purposes?
I guess so. I don't even think about SEO purposes. You're the marketing guy. I'm sure I'm going to get an earful about this in about an hour, folks. I think Björgvin's probably going to talk me into going back to Eleftherian, I feel. Anyway, forget it. It's not important.
No, you were talking about, it's interesting to mention imposter syndrome because we do this thing regularly on Fridays. We do Feedback Friday where I have my insiders members. They all join us on a live call. We all listen to everybody's music that they're bringing in and working on that week. I like to pride myself on it's the only social group where people actually listen to your music when you post it.
You might be right.
So Ed was feeling a little impostery, I guess.
I was, man. I just was. I think I still am. I always am, but I just really was that day.
Yeah.
Because I'm listening to this song I turned in, and it's got all these parts. It's got these guitar lines and these keyboard lines, and I play those instruments, yes, but I'm not like Dr. John on the keyboards or anybody on the guitar. I just feel so just unworthy of, like, if you said, let's go out and play a gig together, I'd be like, man, let's keep it simple. And you do all the lead work. So yeah, I just thought that's how I felt. I felt like an imposter.
Yeah. And then we all
Um,
listened to your song and made fun of you for feeling like an imposter
yeah,
because
well, hey, I can still feel like it.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
It is. It's fair. Feeling is fair.
Min's here. Sup guys? Hey man, how you doing? Good to see you. Thanks for
Hey,
tuning
man.
in.
Sup, guys. Sup. Um, Imposter syndrome, musical mental health. I think that's important too, because I think I think of what we do together a lot as all of our Wednesdays as artist therapy,
Yeah,
isn't it? You know,
a little bit.
I
And
teach. I work with a lot of performers over my almost 30 years now. It's coming up on a 30-year career here since the early 90s, and I've been working with performers of many stripes since then, and it's always been one version or another of how I can help make them even better, not by really what they're doing, but by helping them get over themselves or get over their head or have just address their confidence level, which is why I kind of think of it as artist therapy. It's like, okay, so what is ailing you today? Where are you? And how can what's nagging you? So it's interesting because when you and I got together backstage before we opened up this mic here at 5 o'clock, my time anyway,
yeah.
um, you looked really crappy, man.
Oh, thank you. Gee,
Well, you look
thanks.
good. You always look good. You always got your hair always looks good. You always look
Yeah,
good.
the facade, the
But
the
I know you well enough now to look at you and go, he's down. And I asked you, and you hit me with the word that I went, ah, haven't heard that word in a while.
yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
word?
Ennui is real.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everybody knows that term. It is a feeling of listlessness and dissatisfaction arising from a lack of occupation or excitement. How dreary indeed.
We call it a funk. You were in a funk. That's
Yeah.
how I call it.
Yeah.
You still are probably, but what was
Nah, I'm
going on?
getting better because I have to perform. It's
Yeah.
kind of it's an
It's
interesting
tricky.
thing to perform because you kind of just have to be in the moment, and anything else that is outside of this moment is currently irrelevant until I go back to whatever we
Yeah,
did
but I
before.
think the trick with real good performers. Now you got good and good is different, but what we're doing anyway, this podcast, this talk between us, it feels for me anyway less like performance and more like we're talking to each other, to
Totally.
Blake, to Min, to Ray, to whoever's in the room, quote unquote room.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. You're feeling bad, but then good because you're performing. But you were talking a lot about, before we went on, you were talking a lot about the work you've done in the past and
Mhm.
how a couple of years ago you were saying audio issues had you reeled down and you weren't feeling it. And then something happened that made you kind of lock back into some enthusiasm. But what was it? I don't remember what you said. What was it?
It's, and speaking of imposter syndrome, it's interesting to talk about imposter syndrome in this regard because even up until almost very recently, and I think people do still suffer from this even at any sort of success they have, is that you always think that other people are better than you and you compare yourself to maybe other people that are more successful than you. And it wasn't so in the last, since about August and September, I've kind of found a newfound resurgence in my enthusiasm for audio issues and music production and mixing in particular. And the 1.5 year, 2 years before that, I was very chronically suffering from this feeling of ennui, or being in a sort of a chronic funk, I guess you could call it. And audio issues was just sort of on autopilot. I had these courses, I was doing this stuff, and then I was, trying to figure out like, well, what's the next step? What do I do and whatnot? And I was sort of losing sight of what was really important. and it wasn't until I was trying to engage with the audience, and it never felt like it was a back and forth sort of thing. So I really had a hard time figuring out what I should be focusing on, what I should be dealing with, or what topics I should talk about. And it's funny to think about the fact that like this book sells 10 to 20 copies a day, and was doing that at that time, and I was still feeling like, oh, I don't really know anything about mixing, even though like thousands of subscribers are getting information about mixing.
People
So
are reading my book, and yet
yeah,
I have
yeah,
no faith in my ability.
yeah, because I couldn't see it, right? I could be like, okay, I'm sending out this information, hopefully it's useful. So there was
Mm.
actually a very specific email that I sent out last summer, was just like, hey, I would love to know if anything that I've been saying for the last 8 years has been helpful, and whether you've released any of your records or released any of your mixes or music or whatnot. And I just get an outpouring in my inbox of email replies back, Spotify link, Bandcamp link, SoundCloud links, all this sort of stuff. And I see that, and I'm listening to this music, and it's real all over the place music. There's Norwegian rap, there's like music from Pakistan and the Middle East, there's all sorts of like rock and roll, pop, funk, folk, all that sort of stuff. And it just hits me. I was like, oh, okay, so like this is the impact, right? This is the result. Like what I am putting into the world is actually enabling others to put something of their own into the world. So and at that point, I took all those Spotify links and I created this very eclectic playlist that's just called the Audio Issues Record Releasers, and it follows no form because my subscribers are all over the world making all sorts of music at all different levels. So, but it's a very intriguing playlist to listen to, and there are some really, really good songs in there as well. So that sort of refocused my thoughts and my efforts on like, oh, like, so this is what matters. It's the it's the helping others make or serve the others so that they can make an impact and move up in their lives. Like I may be here, I know this stuff, and then others are maybe here, and I can pull them up to my level just for their mixing skills. And just by doing that, I help them achieve a lot of different things with their music and just with their lives. Because I've heard very often from a lot of musicians now that like the feeling of relief and sort of like accomplishment and pride that when you like can send a Spotify link of your song to someone and like actually hit publish and release because you're confident that you can um, that what you're putting out in the world is actually high quality, that's super valuable to me. And in the last year, that's completely re-energized everything that I've done, especially with the insiders group. Now I see this stuff every week because people are working on new music. There's new music being released. I'm helping them like in the moment because they're coming in, and we are working on sort of the nitty gritty stuff, and then they go on and release that. Nick, for instance, Nick Hamilton, I don't know if you saw the post today, but he just
No.
released his third song, so it's 3 songs in 3
In
months.
3 months. I know he said he wanted to do one a month. I
Yeah,
challenge you, Nick. No, I did not challenge him. But good for you. I don't know if he's in the room right now, but even if he's not, maybe he'll watch this on a replay or something. But
yeah,
I'm glad that you shouted out to him. Good for
yeah.
that. Good for you and good for him.
And also it also helped me re-energize my efforts on working on music, not just teaching others how to work on theirs. So I've been mixing a lot of music for students, for clients, and those sorts of things. And doing that really helps you be even better. And if you are better, you're better equipped to help those that are looking for you or are looking to you for advice. And then basically what were talking about right before we came on was that mixing with 5 plugins, my flagship course that the book is built on, is is great. But now I'm working on um, consolidating or dissecting or or what have you. It's all this content that I've learned, all these new techniques that I've learned, and I'm sort of putting all of that into a new course and a new because I'm learning every day, and I'm learning more stuff, more tips and tricks and stuff like that as I'm working on stuff, because you can't just learn how things are done. You actually have to apply what you learn so that you can teach it. I am if I am very much against the phrase, if you can't do, then you teach, because I just think that's bullshit, because there are a lot of people that can do and are unable to teach. And I think that if you can teach, it just means that you understand it so well that you can actually teach it to others, because that
the best way to learn something is to teach it. Yeah.
Alex says long audio issues. Yeah. And Craig says, "Hey guys, first time here in the middle of some production downtime since my computer blew up. I hope it didn't actually explode.
God, for good
thank God
backups.
for good backups." And then Robert is, "Hey, I'll check in from Los Angeles. Just recently got hip to audio issues, so I want to check out the conversation." Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Hope you enjoy the conversation. This is completely random as always. But if you have,
does that say the Reaper blog?
Yeah, that's John Tidy.
John, I'm a huge fan. I don't know if Bjorkman told you that last time. Bjorkman, he met with you right after we did our Wednesday or our Friday or someday. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Blake asked, do you guys feel quantity over quality or vice versa? One really good song every 4 to 6 months, highest quality possible, plus strong release, or say one a month, not as high quality as 6 month track, but much more relevant, consistent. I think quantity leads to quality. I think if you over focus on one track, you're gonna get into analysis paralysis, and you're never gonna know when it's done. You have to give yourself some form of a deadline, and then release something. Because if you do 10 tracks, the first track might be, let's do it in, let's say your first track gets a C in some arbitrary grade, right? But you keep going, I'm sure that your 10th track is going to get an A+, because just due to the experience that you've learned and acquired along the way of working on all the other tracks. Whereas if you obsess over that first track, you might be able to get it to a B, but you could have done 10 tracks in that time instead. So there is a story about a pottery instructor that gives two groups in his class the same, or two different assignments. So one group is just they're just graded on the quality, so they have to make one pot, and it has to be the absolute perfect pot, the best one they can ever make, and that's the only one they can submit at the end of the semester to get a grade. The second group is only judged on quantity, how many pots they can make. And the second group, all of their grades are way better because they not only do more work and learn more about the topic, but the umpteenth pot that they make at the end of the semester is infinitely better than what they started with. And they couldn't have gotten there if they didn't put in the work and done all this stuff throughout the semester.
I think somehow, Blake, the trick from my point of view is developing a keen sense of taste. That is to say, my first 2-3 years of writing songs, I went back and listened to a lot of them because what the heck, I got some time right now. And there were a couple in there that I was like, this is a good song. But most of them, I'm like, no, I'm glad I didn't. No, I worked on this, but I'm glad I didn't release it. I'm glad I didn't release it. I'm glad I didn't release it. And then, like now, I'm at a point where, as I write, I know whether or not, like, I've honed my own sense of taste enough to know that this song I'm working on is not going to be worth my time. But this other song I'm starting, there's something here.
Right.
And I will cultivate there's something here, those songs, those works. whether sometimes it's not even a song yet, it's just lyrics or it's a riff or something like that. And I'll grab onto it and work with it, but I think the trick for me is cultivating a sense of what's worth the pursuit. And then once I make that choice, which is not, it's not like I sit down and I look at them and I go, okay, which children am I going to, Sophie's Choice or something? No, I think, I just find myself gravitating towards. And then when I'm in with that song, when I'm working on it, I'm always trying to just do the best work I can do on it.
Right.
But I also have, a deadline. Like I give myself a deadline.
Right.
I give myself 1 week deadline or a 2 week deadline. Like I do it in terms of weeks. If, once the song is there, once the song is completed, sometimes a song takes 20 minutes. Sometimes it takes months.
Right. Right. John Titus says, it's great to see my viewers, readers, listeners winning because of something I've taught them. And yeah, this is exactly what I mean is that once you put your wins, once you put your wins on the shoulders of your students and you make your basically your existence something to pay forward, I guess. I think that's super valuable to think of it think about it of how you can be of service, because once you start thinking about how you can serve others, it's just going to do good things for you.
Yeah, the one thing I tell the people I work with, the performers I guess I coach and mentor them, I always end up telling them at some point, try to make the other guy look good.
Right.
Like when you're on stage, if you're thinking about you and how you look, you're dead.
Right.
It's a much harder haul. But if you're always thinking about how do I make the other guy look good? Like how can I help them out? How can I help them shine? Really? And if you're doing that and the other guy's doing that and everybody's sort of doing that, we're in business.
Yeah. And that's sort of something that is taught sort of in improv in a lot of ways, and obviously in acting too, is that, in improv, you are feeding off of each other, and you coming up with stuff doesn't work unless you sort of go back and forth with the other person. So constant sort of back and forth situation. Nick is here. He says, hi guys. I just want to let you know.
Congrats on the release, bud.
Yeah. Congratulations, Nick. Phil Jones asks, do you think active listening to other people's songs in general helps with music production? I do.
Yes.
I think it gives you a lot of different ideas. A lot of music that I just listen to because it has interesting sonics. The drums are in a weird space that makes things cool. Maybe that's something that I'll mentally put away for later.
I do that all the time. All the time.
Yeah. It just basically is like a reference. Like you don't references in the way that you reference mixes in the moment, but it's more like the more music you listen to and the more hip you are to both old music and new music and all the trends and everything that's going on, it'll help you. You'll have a more multifaceted music production viewpoint or a person.
Yeah, even albums I don't really like per se. I'll listen if like this morning on the run, I listened to Van Hunt's got an album called Swarf. I still don't know what it means. If anyone does, you can let me know. It'll probably be embarrassing to someone. But anyway, listening to this album this morning, I was thinking, this is not my favorite Van Hunt album. What You Were Hoping For is a great album in my opinion, and I listened to that for Sonics as well. But even this album today, I was like, wow, he's panned the drums to the right and got a really like I felt like I was listening to old Motown, but it did not sound like old Motown. Right. And then I was like, I think he just wants us to focus on the vocals, which are so rich. Right. So yeah, it gives you ideas, and it helps to do that thing I was saying earlier I think it was Blake, cultivating your own sense of taste. Yeah. You know, what you're like, oh, this is good, I want to steal this, or this is bad. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, to me, so Ray asks, he feels like it all sounds the same these days. He thinks a lot of music is overproduced.
I'm with you totally.
And I am not.
I totally agree with that on pop music anyway, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, and that's the name of the game. I think opposing viewpoints are great because the discussion and the dialogue really does give you a different perspective to think about. I sure there's a plenty of music that's overproduced these days, but knowing the knowledge of knowing about it and understanding how it's made is still valuable.
Yeah, we're talking about two different things here, though. You're talking about how it's produced, and I can totally get behind that. Like, I can listen to Billie Eilish, not my favorite work, but I can really appreciate the production on that,
Right.
right? I'm talking about content. I'm talking about the songs. I'm like, wait a minute, somebody produced this? Like, it's like listening. It's I was saying to my wife earlier, maybe today, yesterday. It was like we watched when we're watching something on television. We can mute the commercial if we have to watch a commercial, and it's much more interesting because the visuals are kind of cool. But some music, pop music today, it sounds a lot like the inversion of muting the commercial. I kind of feel like I'm listening to a commercial, like a dog food commercial or an insurance commercial. Even though I'm not listening to an insurance I kind of feel like I'm being sold something here. I don't know what it is, but I wish it would stop. Anyway,
the viewpoints in this show are only expressions from their respective members and do not do not reflect the corporation.
sorry, I stand behind that one. In terms of production, I have to agree with you. Yes, everything is worth a listen.
Yeah, for sure. Robert said, I recently wrapped up a song that took 15 months to complete. So yeah,
I'm working on one that I started in 2017. And I'm just finishing like a mix today. I was like, oh, I remember this song. Let me mix this one.
Yeah.
I think now I have the capability to do it where before I couldn't.
Right. Craig asked, any advice for getting out of that grip of perfectionism, just not knowing when to stop or ruining a great track by overdoing it? Well, we do it through feedback in the Insiders community. They technically nobody has a deadline other than like, I will pester you until you make yourself be done. So, but I don't know how. I think you should make yourself a deadline and then get some feedback, some constructive feedback from others until you can be satisfied that what you have compares to what you like.
I think something also that I think I might have gotten this from John Tidy, actually. And if not, whatever, John, you take credit for it. Nice job. When you find that you're making moves in the 0.5 or less range, if you're changing the Q a little bit, or you're going, I get 1 dB on this and half a dB on that, then you are there. And the other thing to know for, when a mix is done for me is like when I start doing that, when I start going, oh yeah, then I'm like, okay, I'm close. I'm getting close. I should walk away. I should go have some fruit or something and get out of the chair.
All right. Ross says quantity is great, but only release the quality. When I was working as an engineer 20 years ago, a typical band would record 30 to 15 songs and 10 of them make it onto the CD.
That's a lot. That's a very high percentage right there. Wow.
This is actually a really good, this good topic to talk about. My friend Joe Gilder, who many of you are probably already familiar with, of homestudiocorner.com, he gave himself a goal of writing 50 songs in 12 weeks a few years ago. And long story short, he did finish that goal. So he had 50 songs. But his perspective or his viewpoint was that if I have 50 songs, and if 80-20, the 80-20 principle being that, you'll get 80% of the results from 20% of the effort, then he dictates that 50 songs will make a really, really good 10-song album.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think that's what became Better This Way, which is a really good album and a really interesting experiment that he did with himself to just sort of force creativity in a quantity way with the goal of releasing the quality. And obviously you can work on, the B-sides and the deep cuts, because sometimes if you're a diehard fan, it doesn't matter if it's a iPhone recording of a ukulele and like late at night, you'll listen to that too. So I think that working on, having the work ethic of continuing to create and then reevaluating and sort of reflecting on what you created and then deciding which parts are the good parts and then releasing those or hanging your hat on those creations is something to is a good goal to have, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
um Simon says swarf is a word we say in the UK meaning the offcuts and shavings from a lathe when working metal.
I'll get back to you on that one, Simon. There was no metal. There were no metal references in the album, even sonically. So I don't know. I don't know what he's up to. But go ahead.
Yeah. Ray says, what was it that made Pink Floyd so different from all the others? Was that a combination of good songwriting, performance, and sound engineering? Just a thought. Why do you think Pink Floyd became such a big band?
I can't tell who you're asking.
Well, I'm asking the only person that can actually.
Well, no, Ray could answer you. Ray could go bum, 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 and type. You know,
Sure,
he might. I thought you were asking Ray. I was, I guess, hoping you were. What made them? Well, all their work isn't so great.
Yeah, that's fair.
Number one,
really dislike their first albums. I'm not a big fan of the Syd Barrett phase.
Yeah, neither am I. But then you get to Roger Waters kind of coming into the studio saying, we're going to do the pros and cons of hitchhiking or The Wall. And I guess even before that, he comes in with Dark Side. Hey, Dark Side, you wrote that in your subject heading, Dark Side of the Moon. You know, I don't think they even knew what they were onto with that.
Right. I think that's an interesting topic too, is that you don't really know whether what you are creating is good. You kind of have to put it into the world to find out.
Yeah, and some stuff that I feel like is good, other people think is crap, and vice versa. You know, I can't tell you how many times this happens so many times, almost every time. The performers on stage, they're doing their thing, they come off, and they're like, "Man, I was on tonight," and I'm like, "I don't know about that. You know, you were good, but we'll try again tomorrow." And then the opposite happens. Well, they'll come off and they're like, "Oh, I suck." Yeah. And I was like, that was a great performance.
Yeah. And
so
Pink Floyd too, I think they hit a wave. They hit a you know, because they basically hit the crest of a genre of psychedelica, and there's a lot of you can think of their success also in the context of the historical context of the psychedelic 70s. That will always have something to do with it. Obviously, they're great songs, great musicians. Dave Gilmour, one of my favorite guitar players.
Yeah,
I learned guitar just from teaching myself how to play the wall solos and things like that. I learned to bend from Dave Gilmour.
Yeah.
And but I think a lot of it if they came out now with Dark Side of the Moon, I don't even know if it would.
Well, they wouldn't play it on a radio. You'd never know, because the crap they play on the radio, harkening back to an earlier comment that I made, they don't even play the radio, and I don't even know if radio is a thing anymore. I listen to the radio, our local station, but I don't know. This gets me depressed. Let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
Good songwriting, yes, it was good songwriting.
Yeah.
Was it good engineering? Yes, it was. Was it good performance? Yes, it was. It was sort of like, everything kind of came together, but it wasn't an overnight thing. I mean, these guys working on this.
Yeah. Sort of some of it is definitely a lightning in a bottle sort of scenario. And then, you can ride that fame as long as you want, but obviously you're going to evolve as a creative. Maybe you will part ways as they did, and then you will pursue other avenues that maybe like nurture you creatively, but might not be as popular to the fans that you've fans that you've accumulated along the
Yeah,
way.
I just think of Bruce Springsteen when you say that. I mean, I was a big fan of his. Uh, back, I think I discovered him when like The River was just out. So that was 1980, I think, and I was just coming into him then. I was like 10 or 11 years old. My uncle got me into him, and then Nebraska, and I was like, what's going on with this? And then I think it was then Born in the USA, and suddenly he was on the map. And then Ghost of Tom Joad later down the road, and I was like, what's going on here? And yeah, I think for him, lots of nurture and important stuff. But for his old fans, some of them hang with him.
Yeah, yeah. And then that's sort of how it is. Like sometimes
That's how it is.
you only like the one album, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading some of Chuck Palahniuk's on writing book,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a huge fan of Palahniuk back in the day when he was writing Lullaby and Survivor and Choke and Fight Club and all that, and then I just stopped reading because it got like too intense, and I just grew away or whatever. And now I'm getting back to it. I read a couple of his more recent novels, and they're pretty good. So there's it's a cycle. It's a business cycle. It's a creative cycle. It's a balance. It's a yin and yang sort of situation. I do want to comment on Ray Dalling's comment here. A taxi driver once said to me that his band had wrote 10,000 songs. I just thought I bet most of them sound the same. Well, don't knock it. AC/DC has made a great career out of it.
No comment.
Robert asks, what's your take on releasing LP albums these days? Are they still relevant? I feel like there's something to be said for having a sonic through line between a collection of songs, but I mostly see nothing longer than EPs coming from smaller indie artists, but many just releasing singles recorded in different places with different producers. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are it's like marketplace dictating behavior.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm experimenting with. I'm not a singles kind of guy, which is going to sound funny to some people, I'm sure, especially out of context. But I always work towards a through line of collection of songs, albums, and then meeting Björgvin, he encouraged me. He's like, listen, you got a lot of material. You should do one a month or something like that. I don't know where the idea came from. And so in October, I decided one a month, and I was just going to release new material, and I'm in the process of doing that. And I don't know. I'll unpack it at a different day. Maybe we'll do a specific episode about that, or that is aimed in that area. But I am jonesing for longer work, and I've already started, working on like the songs that I'm working on, even ones that Björgvin hears on Friday. He doesn't know it, but they're pieces in a larger mosaic that complete a grander picture that hopefully hang together. Like this album, Swarf, today's Van Hunt album. One of the things I thought when I'm running, listening to it, and I'm thinking, this is an album. Like these songs they want to be together. And if you make one of them a single and release it once a month, they are not going to work. They're not going to work. But in context,
right,
they start to talk to each other, and it's not even lyrically what's going on. It's sonically what's going on. So I'm totally jonesing for album release, and it will happen this year probably.
Yeah.
But that's me. So Björgvin, thoughts?
I get that. And I really like albums that are really good throughout. Like that, it's an amazing experience to be able to listen to a full length album that's just is just beautiful from start to finish. Obviously, we live in a singles world because attention spans are so short, and everybody's trying to market their music in so many different ways these days that we have people just trying to get as many songs as possible out so that maybe they can shop some of them to commercials and things like that, or sync licensing opportunities and things of that nature. And there are two sort of viewpoints that I think about it is like if you release a single every month, you always have something new to talk about if you like marketing and promoting your music. which is
He
rare.
said that a little bit for me. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but it's true because but if you release an album, you still have to do the same amount of marketing to promote it, but then you're always talking about the same thing for a really, really long time. So you're putting in a lot of work, a lot of creative work to create a big masterpiece, let's say, and then you release that, and then you have to talk about that sort of ad nauseum if you're gonna market it properly. Obviously, there are automations, and obviously, if you have if you have a marketing budget and a bunch of money, you can hire PR people to do that for you. But if you are an indie musician, the common best practice or the common recommendation is to release singles because you're always top of mind. You're always working on something new, and your evolutionary processes as an artist is more visible to the outside world, so people might be able to follow you a bit better. So
It's like trying to follow a raindrop in a storm on the way down to the ground. It's like looking out and going, "Oh, look, there's one. There's my favorite." Or like like picking, picking up leaves off the ground, right? It's like, "Oh no, this one. This is my favorite of all the leaves." I don't know. I think that what you're talking about really applies. It applied more in the world before the internet, because every person with a microphone and a camera, like everyone out there now is an artist,
right.
in quotes with a small a. I can be anything I want to be, and who's gonna tell me no? The haters, and then we can argue about that. But if I'm going to make music, like I think it was Blake earlier, we were talking about quality and quantity, and that's a lot. It's going on in the chat right now. This question of quality and quantity. If you're making one song a month and you're producing that, that's a lot of work. And then you're going to release it and then talk it up and be on top of mind. And it's just more than a man can bear. And or woman, of course, it's more than a human can stand. So I guess either be a superhuman, have a second human who's like really into marketing the way you are and producing music. Maybe they exist, or don't do a single a month. I guess take human bites, as they say. When you're really hungry and the pizza's in front of you, you're going to snarf it down, not swarf it down. And I guess I'm saying take human bites.
Yeah.
That's another way out or through this. But there's just so much music out there. And there should be. That's great. Makes you ask the question, what's the goal? That maybe is another day. But what's the goal? Why am I working so hard? Why are you building audio issues and doing everything you're doing? Such hard work you're doing. I know it.
I just don't have anything else to do.
That's a fine answer. But, if your answer is, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on different answers. But I think we all basically bang our head against the brick wall of some shape or form. And we have to ask ourselves, why the hell are we doing it?
Yeah. Fair
enough.
Ross says, I worked with Roger Waters for 2 weeks in the 90s, allowed us to try anything and everything. We ended up using the squeak from the studio door in one song. All right.
I love that. That's great. Use what's in the room. That's what I always say.
Yeah. Thomas asks, in say 10 to 15 years, how do you think the music of today will be described? What will define the 2020s?
Not music. Something else will define the 2020s and the 2010s. It ain't going to be like, oh, the 2020s is the golden age of music. I don't see it. Maybe, but I don't see it.
Yeah, it's a good.
It'll be the golden age of something. I think right now we're in the golden age of television, literally.
Yeah, that's often said that, like, there's never been as high budgets and as quality television as there is right now. It's actually kind of exhausting because
it is.
Now I've just started watching trailers for shows because I can't physically watch all the shows that I would like to see.
Yeah, and trailers used to be called teasers because they were supposed to tease you into wanting to see it. But now you can see the whole movie in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Or if it's a long trailer, you can watch a 4-minute trailer. Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad. Very bad.
Phil says, I think there's a huge psychological factor in that most people associate memories to music up to the age of 25 to 26, which is why people tend to like music from the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely something that I've heard as well. You definitely are more attached to music that you grow up with, and you probably have, you know, one foot in whatever era that is, and that could be an era in of mixed genres and mixed decades for sure, because it really just depends on what you were listening to.
Hmm.
Luckily, I feel like I listened to so much different music growing up that, you know, both from just my dad's records and then being in a rock band and then being involved in the music industry since I was basically 14 years old in some way, that I have an affection for music that maybe the common, you know, layperson might not have. They just like going back to whatever albums they like the sound of. I have a little bit of a I want to hear something new, but it can't be too new. It has to be something that I'm familiar with in a slightly unique way. And I think that's actually a human psychological trait in that way, that, you know, for instance, in Spotify's Discover Weekly, first they tried to put only new songs on there to see how people would react,
Hmm.
and it was a failure. And then when they started putting songs that they knew that they had listened to and liked in there, sprinkled in with the new songs, they got a lot more engagement for the new songs. And there's this book called, it's the Science of Popularity. I forget the title completely, but it talks about how, you know, you can only if there's like four or five different things about a specific story, for instance, you can only flip one aspect of it in reverse to make it unique. You can't make it, if you make too many things unique in a story, then that story won't feel familiar to humans, and therefore will be confusing to market and to consume.
Yeah, Lewis Taylor's career right there is. I mean, really, I think it was Chrysalis or Island. No, it was Island Records. I think they're related. Anyway, they signed him on a demo, and they had never done that before. I don't know if they've done it since, but they'd never done it before, and this was in the mid '90s. And and they were really excited about this Lewis Taylor guy. It was like this kind of blue-eyed soul with some psychedelic weirdness. And that was the problem. I mean, he's so masterful at so many different things, which he did all by himself in his bedroom, literally, in England. Um, and his career kind of suffered because of it. They did not know how to market this guy. And eventually he was just like, whatever, I'm out. I'm done.
Right, right. Ignatius Rainey, I think he goes by Nate, but he hasn't told me that. He asks, should I mix in mono first on a project to make better EQ decisions and have a better sound quality in regards to muddy mixes? Well, I can tell you how I mixed your song that I mixed this week, because I actually just finished mixing one of his songs for him. A
Perfect.
really, really, really cool song. Very, very fun to work on. And yes, I mixed it all in mono to start. I did the entire rough mix in mono. EQing in mono, panning, volume, all that stuff in mono, and then I flip it over to the bigger speakers and make sort of automation decisions and other, you know, other tweaks after that. And it's not the most fun way of mixing, but it often gets you better results faster.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, Theodor Gudmundsson says,
Sigador.
yeah,
Hey.
you know that guy?
Yes, I know him from Ian Shepherd's world.
Yes, he's a mastering engineer.
Yeah.
I think he lives in Denmark, right? Theodor.
I don't know.
He's, he's
He knows
from
his shit.
He's from Iceland. He's a mastering engineer. He says it's hard to see what defines the presence as such. It's probably a whole lot easier a few decades later, but then again, we could get as many different answers as the persons we ask. Yeah, so hindsight is 2020 for sure, and it's definitely 2020 and 2020. But
But I'm chick.
there's also a lot of different things that are interesting to talk about with the whole genre things, like what defines the present, what defines music today, because we are in such a melting pot of musical styles, because people are I think, if anything, people are less afraid of mixing a ton of different styles in their music to create something new, more so than before. And yes, he does live in Denmark.
Yay. There used to be a blog years ago called, and I'm going to just say the name of the blog, We Fucking Love Music. And I don't know how I discovered this thing, on the internet, and one click leads to another. And I thought, we fucking love music. Okay. And they would have, just different things that whoever was contributing liked. And I learned to love so many different kinds of music from that. I didn't know anything about Caribou or Bibio. I learned them from there. So Sumo Yokota, who's a great Japanese artist, learned about him from there. I could go on, but I don't know. That this was back in the day before every click meant you had to face a pop-up that said "sign my list" or whatever. I'm sure there's there's a technical term for that pop-up. I call it the annoying pop-up. But before that, before everything was monetized, there were blogs like that where I could go and learn about new music, new to me anyway.
Yeah.
Muslim Gauze, this artist who died in the 80s. I think he died in the 80s or 90s. So much work this guy did. And they were all remixes. Blew my mind. They still blow my mind. So check out Muslim Gauze.
Yeah, one of the interesting, in the last 2 years, it's been a lot of fun to work, back when we worked at the Bonnaroo Music Festival for the last 2 years, because we would get 25-ish bands into the studio backstage, and they would all be, music posters. They have the headliners on top and all that. So we would get, the middle font bands. So the bands that you didn't necessarily know, but were good enough to play at Bonnaroo. And sometimes they would be actually famous, like Sheryl Crow and Walk the Moon, Raylan Baxter, sort of like well known in their industry or in their genre maybe. And you'd get introduced to these artists that you probably would never you would have never necessarily looked them up or discover them otherwise. And I was very, very lucky to discover all these great artists, because they set up in the studio and played a live show in front of me, and then I would just put all of their music on a playlist that I now have on Spotify. And I think Spotify has actually gotten really, really good at targeting music to me that I like. So whenever I put, because I put so many different songs on my playlist, that the AI has gotten really good at recommending songs that I might like. So
yeah, I'll use Spotify for that now. Like I'll go into things you might like, or best new music, new releases, and or daily mix. I'll be like, oh, what did they throw in there? Yeah, I know. I just don't like the idea of one company telling me, saying this is what you should listen to. This you might like this. I don't know.
yeah,
A little too old school that way. Sorry.
yeah.
But I do use it. That said,
one of the great perks of the Audio Issues email list for me is all the music that people send me.
I like Feedback Fridays for that reason, because
Right.
I get to listen to like Constantine's music, for example, and I would never have heard that, but it's great.
Yeah, exactly. And whenever I get new songs, sometimes a lot of people send me mixes or send me songs to critique, and I try to listen to as many of them as I possibly can. And then often I will mix songs for people that are on the list too, and that helps me discover a lot of artists that are really, really good, and that I probably never would have discovered otherwise. Yeah, Ray Dolling says, I remember when I first heard Stairway to Heaven on a vinyl record, I was blown away. It sounded so amazing. That's when I learned it on guitar and discovered everyone could play it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely been there. Definitely learned how to play that on guitar.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
I don't know the last time I played it to you.
Yeah. Simon says all decades of great music and an awful amount of dross, which is probably a British term that means something.
Dross is not a British term.
No? Why?
No.
Well, I'm too foreign to understand this word.
Dross is the waste material as a result of smelting.
Wow. Something I
Dross
definitely.
is waste. I remember I was in a program, a theater program, and we were looking for the department new chair, and we were interviewing this guy, and this guy was talking to our faculty, and I overheard him. I was in the hall, and he was like, "You do such an overwhelming amount of dross." I was like, "Whoa, this guy does not want the job, but he's speaking his mind." Yes. Anyway, carry
Well,
on, Simon.
Simon says, as you get older, you have less time to sift through to find the good. Yeah, and that's it's a very good point. And I also think that time is the great filter.
Hmm.
That in the looking back, a lot of the quality is going to seep up uh, from all of the other stuff. And sometimes it's going to be these hits that are earworms and maybe aren't necessarily the best quote unquote songs or whatever. But I had a 1999 birthday party for my wife last November. The theme was 1999, and we only played songs that came out in the year 1999. And it was not only a fun guilty pleasure sort of theme to have as a party, but there's a lot of really good songs out there from 1999. I think I have the playlist here still. And the 1999 party is No Scrubs by TLC, Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys,
Love TLC.
Genie in a Bottle,
Hmm.
uh How's It Going to Be by Third Eye Blind, the album Third Eye Blind by Third Eye Blind, and of course the classic Getting Jiggy with It by Will Smith.
Getting jiggy with it.
Learn to Fly by the Foo Fighters.
Hmm.
Um, She's So High by Tal Bachman. I think that may have been maybe a one-hit wonder. The Bad Touch by Bloodhound Gang, which I saw live in 1998 when I was 13 years old. So lots of songs, and I think all of these were either released in 1999 or around that era, except for, of course, the song 1999 by Prince.
Mm.
Yeah. Pseudo says, I mean, take the 80s, for instance. There was a lot of crap. There were even top songs nobody remembers, and that applies to every decade and period. Yeah. So totally.
Yeah, I listened to So the other day, which is from the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Strange album.
I know.
Good album, but a strange album. And Red Rain, great song, but when you listen to it, you really just like listen to the structure of the song. What an odd structure. It's got such a strange structure. But it's got a great chorus, man.
Yeah, totally.
And he's a brilliant artist, and his voice alone is worth listening to the album.
Yeah.
But I remember listening to it going, this is a very unique, weird album. It does not belong in the 80s, but I guess it does.
Right.
Anyway, that was my 80s moment, folks.
The
past week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of all different genres and different decades. I'm definitely a child of the 80s. I grew up listening to music in the late 90s. I started performing and playing and getting a little bit too snobby about music in the early 2000s, which is not a great time to be snobby about music because it's like the new metal era, which is, that didn't do anybody any favors.
When is a good time to be snobby about music? Anyway.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think music snobs can be pretty tiring if they have incredibly limited perspectives and viewpoints, and especially those that make others feel bad about their taste in music. I have no patience for people like that. Oh. All right. Ray says he hated the music of the 80s except to 83 Let's Dance, and then it went down from there. And this is put together by the day. Oh, I'll have to take a look at that link later. Yeah, and then Pseudo says, "So is brilliant. It took me quite a while to appreciate it for what it is, but yeah, it's a great record." Yeah, Peter Gabriel. I also just like Genesis in general. They have a cool sound. Maybe it's dated, maybe it's cliched, but I don't care. I'm allowed to like it. Well, I think we're at the hour mark, so I think it's time to wrap it up.
Wow, wasted another completely good hour.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, those of you who did.
This has been your hour of music on the randomest of
Art
music
therapy with Björgvin and Eleftherian.
Yeah. So go forward, conquer, play music, release it, have fun, and
or maybe don't conquer, just go forward.
Yeah, well, I meant conquer your creativity on the inside, I think.
I say, cultivate thy taste, enjoy thyself, treat yourself well, treat others well.
Yeah.
And eat good food and get some sleep.
Yeah. And use your ears.
Yeah, use your ears. And if anyone wants, I was thinking about this earlier. I'm glad I remembered it. ed@relieftone.com. If you want some artist therapy, no charge, no fee. I'm not in it for the money. Just would love to kind of meet new people. And if you'd like, ed@relieftone.com. Relief as in, whew.
Yeah. Yeah. And do let us know if you want. We're gonna do this for a couple more weeks, then we're gonna take a break. But please let us know what you like and dislike about the show, what you want us to talk about, topics that you would like us to touch upon, so that we can come back with I wouldn't say more of a plan, but maybe a better idea of what we're gonna talk about. Or maybe we should always be improv.
I don't know. I'm partial to seeing what's in the room, but I like that. I like going, what is in the room today? What do we need to? Yeah. When I walk into a classroom or I work with a group of people, it's one of the first things I either say it or I see it and I know right away. I'm like, okay, we need to work on this. We need to talk about this or something. But anyway, it was good.
Thank you all
Thanks again, everybody. Take care out there.
Yeah. See you later.
Bye.